Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. Strong winds and heavy rain pummel California. Residents are bracing for more storms in the coming days. The U.S. moves forward with retaliation plans in response to the deadly drone strike in Jordan. More on the newly approved military response. Oregon declares a state of emergency over the spike in fentanyl. The state has a multi-level approach to the crisis. A powerful storm that bore down on much of California on Wednesday continued overnight into Thursday. Officials urged the residents to brace themselves for the heavy rain. NTD's Stephanie Sakal has an update on the weather from Los Angeles.
California is facing back-to-back storms known as atmospheric rivers. This week, the storm is expected to bring 1 to 3 inches of rain, especially here in Southern California. Flood warnings are in full effect. Residents of San Diego are preparing for the worst. They were just swamped by flooding last week. Locals are coming together and filling bags of sand for flood preparations.
I've been out here since 5 o'clock this morning filling bags, and the residents in this neighborhood, they enthusiastic about the help. They've all come down. As you guys can see now, there's people from the community here all helping out, pitching hands.
Later this week, a second storm is on track to hit the state.
The next storm might even be a little bit more powerful than this first storm. But the big issue with the next storm is the length of time that we're going to be under the moderate to heavy rain. And so that's going to add up very quickly and over a long period of time. So that could produce, again, not only urban flooding, but we're talking small rivers and streams.
The National Weather Service issued a winter storm warning for mountain areas in the Sierra Nevada. They could see up to 18 inches of snow. The silver lining is that this week storms are expected to improve weather levels across the state. Stephanie Sakal, NTD News, California.
Now let's take a look at other top headlines. Today, Washington gave the green light for multi-day military strikes in Iraq and Syria. The now approved plan will take aim at multiple targets, including Iranian personnel and facilities. CBS reported the news Thursday, citing U.S. officials. It's a response to a drone attack in northwestern Jordan near the Syrian border this week. Based on shrapnel found at the attack location, U.S. officials confirmed the drone was Iranian-made. President Joe Biden said Tuesday he had made up his mind on how the U.S. would respond but declined to give more details. While Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the day before the U.S. response could be multi-leveled, coming stages, and be sustained over time. The drone attack was the first deadly strike against the U.S. forces since the Israel-Hamas war erupted in October. The European Union today reached a deal on more support for Ukraine. The leaders of the 27 member countries agreed on an aid package worth over $50 billion. This comes despite threats from Hungary to veto the move.
This is good news. Ukraine is our priority, and that is why we needed this agreement today by all 27 member states and from within the EU budget.
Hungary lifting its veto came as a surprise. Relations between the two countries have been tense. Hungary has long criticized the Ukraine for allegedly curbing the rights of ethnic Hungarians. The financial package was part of a review of the EU's continuing 7-year budget, which requires unanimous approval. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky today thanked the EU for the funding. He says this is a clear signal that Ukraine and Europe will withstand Russia's invasion. To keep American technology from aiding the Chinese military, the Pentagon just listed a dozen more Chinese tech companies it says are working with Beijing's forces. The list works more like a bad reputation label than an actual ban. Its purpose is to warn U.S. entities about the firm's ties to Chinese military, so American businesses will be more cautious about working with them. And while it may not ban U.S. firms from doing businesses with these companies. But the 2024 National Defense Act does ban the Pentagon from working with any Chinese companies on the list. Many Chinese companies that self-describe as civil entities fail to declare their dual-use products. That is related to China's military-civil fusion strategy. under which civilian firms are used to help advance Beijing's military development. The U.S. is expanding efforts to counter that tactic. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis plans to deploy up to 1,000 members of the National Guard to Texas to help at the southern border. DeSantis said in a statement, our reinforcement will help Texas to add additional barriers, including razor wire along the border. We don't have a country if we don't have a border. That is in addition to more than 90 officers already there representing various Florida law enforcement agencies. This comes as Texas Governor Greg Abbott has declared an invasion amid a surge in border crossings and set up a razor wire along some parts of the Rio Grande River. A coalition of 27 states has formed to support Texas's right to defend itself after the Supreme Court ruled that border agents can remove the razor wire. As of the end of 2023, 14 states have deployed personnel and resources to assist in Operation Lone Star. More than 10 million illegal immigrants have reportedly crossed the border since President Joe Biden took office. Oregon officials have declared a state of emergency to address the fentanyl crisis. In response, 3 levels of government will provide the necessary resources.
Governor Tina Kotek, Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler each declared a 90-day state of emergency to address the fentanyl crisis in Portland. The 3 will follow a recommendation by the Portland Central City Task Force. In a statement, Kotek said the next 90 days will yield unprecedented collaboration and focused resources targeting fentanyl and provide a roadmap for next steps. Under the emergency declaration, a command center will be set up in Portland where state, county, and city employees can convene to coordinate strategies and response efforts. Each level of government will have an incident commander responsible for coordinating resources. The command center will report data on the impacts of fentanyl in downtown and use the data to respond accordingly.
A university in Oregon is replacing failing grades with no-credit marks. It's a part of an effort to retain students and get more to graduate instead of dropping out.
Starting this fall, Western Oregon University will drop letter grades D- and F for undergraduate students. Instead, they will be replaced with no credit or NC. Grades A through D will remain the same. NC will show when a student does not meet the course requirements. NC will not negatively impact student GPAs. The purpose of the change is to encourage students to graduate instead of dropping out. In a statement, Provost Jose Cole said lower GPAs create barriers to registration, financial aid, and transferring, and GPAs will now be a true reflection of student success and course mastery. Failures will no longer mask the demonstrated abilities of our students when they pass courses. The university found that students who get an NC have a retention rate of 83%, adding that the problem is more evident with first-generation college students or students entering college from low-income families.
Lawmakers in California have proposed the new bills related to reparations for descendants of African Americans who were enslaved in the U.S. NTD's Jason Blair has more.
The California Legislative Black Caucus introduced a list of 14 reparations bills on Wednesday. The caucus chair, Lori Wilson, says none of the bills include cash payments due to current budget concerns. She told the LA Times, quote, "We started realizing with the budget environment that we were going to have to do more systemic policy change to address systemic racism versus big budget asks because there just wasn't the budget for it. The current proposals are based on recommendations by the California Reparations Task Force, and the caucus hopes to get them passed this year. The ones intended to be introduced within 2 weeks would have the state issue a formal apology, restore property taken under race-based eminent domain, restrict the use of solitary confinement in prisons, offer financial aid to redline communities for career education, eliminate occupational license barriers for individuals with criminal records, provide state-funded grants for African American communities to reduce violence, require notification to locals before a grocery store closes in an underserved community." Jason Blair, NTD News.
In California, an heir to the Levi Strauss Company is running for San Francisco mayor, and he has his family's financial backing.
Daniel Lurie, heir to Levi Strauss, is running for mayor. His mother, Miriam or Mimi Haas, donated $1 million to support him. According to the San Francisco Standard, a member of an independent committee confirmed it received the money from the candidate's billionaire mom. WhatsApp co-founder Jan Koum and a biotech co-founder Oleg Nodelman each donated $250,000 toward his campaign. Lurie, a Democrat, announced his race against Mayor London Breed last September. Under his leadership, he promises to crack down on open-air drug markets and retail theft. According to his website, his endgame is not a life in politics, but a better life for everyone in the city. NTD reached out to Lurie's campaign website for a comment, but didn't hear back by airtime.
Well, take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. No need for a background check to buy bullets. That's what a California judge decided this week. California's marshlands are saved by unexpected heroes, sea otters. Their presence means less erosion as they feed on crabs. On to sports, flag football in Florida. It's a preview of what can be expected at the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. A California federal judge ruled that California residents don't have to pay for and pass a background check every time they buy bullets, preventing the state's ammunition background check from being enforced. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
U.S. District Judge Roger Benitez in San Diego made the decision public on Wednesday, saying that background checks lack historical pedigree and infringe on the Second Amendment by denying all citizens the right to purchase ammunition. Judge Benitez wrote, "A sweeping background check requirement imposed every time a citizen needs to buy ammunition is an outlier that our ancestors would have never accepted for a citizen." Benitez also faulted California for managing over 1 million yearly ammunition background checks, deeming the 11% rejection rate excessively high. Despite California appealing the ruling to the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, Benitez denied the request for a stay, which would have permitted background checks during the appeal process. However, State Attorney General Rob Bonta said these laws were put in place as a safeguard and a way of protecting the people of California, and they work. He goes on to say background checks save lives. Several states, including California, mandate background checks for gun purchases. California extends this to ammunition, with background checks costing $1 or $19 based on the eligibility for each bullet purchase. Some states also require ammunition background checks, while most offer licenses valid for several years. The case involved plaintiffs such as Kim Rode, a 3-time Olympic gold medalist in shooting events, and the California Rifle and Pistol Association. Christina Corona, NTD News, California.
The New Mexico Justice Department has declined to press charges against the police officers involved in a wrongful death shooting last year. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Officers from the Farmington Police Department mistakenly went to the wrong home address on April 5, 2023 at approximately 11:30 p.m. The officers were dispatched to 5308 Valley View for a domestic violence call. However, the officers went to the wrong address at 5305. Body cam footage released by the police department shows the officers discussing whether they were at the right address before the door opened and a shooting occurred.
The officers made several attempts to contact the residents, identifying themselves as police officers. As officers were verifying the address, the homeowner came to the door. The man, Robert Dotson, was armed with a handgun as he opened the door. What followed was a chaotic scene, with officers retreating and opening fire. Mr. Dotson was struck and later died at the scene.
The State Justice Department considered a report by Seth W. Stoughton in its review, a University of South Carolina School of Law professor hired by the State Attorney General's office to evaluate the shooting. Stoughton wrote in his report that the way the officers approached the Dotson home was deemed reasonable, even though they mistakenly targeted the wrong residence. After a review, the Justice Department said there is no basis for pursuing a criminal prosecution against 3 Farmington police officers.
Mr. Dotson was not the subject of the call that our officers were responding to. And this ending is just unbelievably tragic. I'm extremely sorry that we are in this position.
The family's attorney suing the city of Farmington and the 3 police officers. The suit says Mr. Dotson opened his front door and was blinded by police flashlights. The police did not announce themselves, and Mr. Dotson had no idea who was in his yard, shining bright lights at him. The State Department of Justice decision likely marks the conclusion of potential state criminal charges against the officers. Christina Corona, NTD News.
According to a new study, resurgence of sea otters in California's marshland bolsters erosion defense. NTD's Stephanie Sikal tells us more.
New research reveals that the resurgence of sea otters, known for their constant eating habits, is playing a crucial role in saving a portion of California's marshland. These otters, particularly fond of dining on marsh crabs, are helping curb erosion by reducing crab populations.
When they came into the system, they cued in on one marsh crab that is super abundant in the Marsh Creek. And by eating that marsh crab and lowering its densities, they lowered the erosion effect of those crabs and thereby slowed the sloughing of the creek banks. They increase fisheries production. They protect against erosion from hurricanes. They sequester carbon 10 to 20 times faster than forests do, and they hold it in their sediments. They soak up pollution before it pollutes our estuaries, and they provide recreational services. So
The research found in Nature magazine shows that when otters come back to a place near Monterey, where the sea meets the land, they eat lots of crabs. This helps stop the land from breaking down. It also keeps the marshland healthy, which is vital for the habitat. Stephanie Sikal, NTD News, California.
Now shifting to the thrilling Pro Bowl weekend in Orlando, Florida, where flag football takes the spotlight and skillful challenges are set to unfold. NTD's Carlos Reyes has more on the story.
The 2024 Pro Bowl games will kick off today from Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida, where the spotlight is on flag football and a series of electrifying skills challenges. The Pro Bowl flag football game is not just for show this year, it's a preview of what we can expect at the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, where flag football is set to make its debut. The excitement doesn't end there. There's a possibility that NFL players could represent Team USA in this new Olympic sport. USA Football CEO Scott Hallenbeck is buzzing with anticipation, and some big names have already thrown their hats in the ring. Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, among others, are expressing their eagerness to bring home gold. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. First, let's indulge in the Pro Bowl weekend skills challenges, promising a spectacle for football fans. Starting with Best Catch, where fans vote online to choose the winner, we'll witness players showcasing their creativity and talent at iconic landmarks around Orlando. Precision passing pits quarterbacks from each conference in a 1-minute accuracy competition, hitting static and moving targets. For golf enthusiasts, closest to the pin sees players driving a golf ball as close to the hole as possible. High stakes, a challenge to catch the most footballs without dropping any, adds an element of concentration under pressure. Dodgeball will bring out the competitive spirit as 4 teams battle it out in a multi-round tournament. Kick-tack-toe, Madden NFL head-to-head, Gridiron gauntlet, tug-of-war, and move the chains round out the lineup, offering a diverse and thrilling array of events. And in a surprising twist, Gardner Minshew has been named one of the AFC's 3 Pro Bowl quarterbacks, showcasing the unpredictability of this year's roster. As more players step up, including CJ Stroud and Tua Tagovailoa from the AFC, and Jalen Hurts, Geno Smith, and Baker Mayfield from the NFC, a total of 27 players now find themselves on the final Pro Bowl rosters who weren't initially chosen. So football fans, fasten your seatbelts for a weekend filled with flag football fever, jaw-dropping skills challenges, and unexpected twists as the Pro Bowl games unfold in Orlando. Carlos Reyes, NTD News.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. And in more China news, a decade-long flow of U.S. technology to sanctioned entities in Iran, allegedly through China and Hong Kong. U.S. prosecutors unveiling an indictment against the 4 Chinese nationals. More details coming tonight at 9:30 on NTD's China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We would like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.